Hi, my name is Konstantin Baum. I'm a master of wine and today we're going to do something really special. I noticed that quite a lot of you are fans of the app Vivino. I rarely use it, but I decided that it might be interesting if I ordered some wines that are highly scored on Vivino, under $20, tasted them and rated them myself and shared all this with you. So ready, set, go! So first of all, I have nothing to do with Vivino, and they certainly didn't pay me to make this video today. I bought all of the wines myself and I'm more than happy to give you my honest opinion on the wines. I just decided to use Vivino because it's widely used in the wine world. More than 52 million users are on Vivino according to their own website. I was therefore able to find some wines that are widely available, and you should be able to find most of these wines in your market if you like to. Vivino is an app that allows you to write tasting notes and score wines based on a 5-star score. Your score will be averaged out against scores from other users for the same wine. I want to find out how useful these scores are, and I will rate the wines myself based on the 100-point scale that I'm usually using. If you want to find out more about scores, then check out my video on scores. I'll link it up somewhere up there. I will taste the wines the same way a Vivino user will taste the wines, not blind, so let's pop corks. So the first wine that we're going to taste is the Themen Sauvignon Blanc Kalk and Kreide from the Südsteiermark in Austria. Austria is a super exciting winemaking country that is producing more and more really exciting, interesting wines that show a lot of flavor, a lot of distinction. So the Südsteiermark specializes in Sauvignon Blanc, and you can see that in this wine. It has some really bright, some really aromatic flavors in there. You got lemon zest, you also have some grassy, fresh green notes on the palate. It's very fresh, very vibrant. This acidity is beautiful because it waters your mouth and really makes this wine a great match for richer, fattier dishes. So it's really, really good. I would definitely like to have some fish here. Some sole with a buttery sauce would be absolutely amazing. The Vivino score for this wine was 4.0. I would score this wine 90 points. It really has everything a Sauvignon Blanc needs, but it could have a little bit more concentration, richness, complexity. Even though this is very nice and very precise, it doesn't really have the complexity of a great Sauvignon. The good thing with these glass stoppers is that if you finish drinking and there's still wine in the bottle, you can just pop them back up and put them back in the fridge. So I'm actually going to reuse the glass. That shouldn't be a problem in a tasting like this, and it would be too much of a hassle to have lots of different glasses in front of me. You can reuse the glass a few times, no problem. So next up is the 2019 Schloss Johannisberg Gelblack Riesling from the Rheingau in Germany. The term Feinherb that you can find on the label here is not clearly defined by law, but it means that the wine is not dry but not sweet, so it's usually between 15 and 25-30 grams of residual sugar. So this is really Riesling in its purest form. It smells of lemon zest, but also green apple, and there's also a little bit of petrol there. So this is pretty classic Riesling coming from a classic estate. So on the palate, the wine isn't concentrated, but it has a lot of power and freshness. The acidity really carries the sugar, which doesn't feel sweet at all. It's fruity, it's lively, it's vibrant. So this is really benchmark Riesling. On Vivino, the wine got the same score as the Sauvignon Blanc before this wine, so 4.0. I would say it's a little bit better. I would give it 91 points. I had to get another Riesling in here, and it's the 2020 Van Volksem Riesling Rotschiefer Cabinet from the Mosel, or if you want to be more precise, from the Saar. This is actually closed under screw cap, which is quite handy. This is another really historic estate. The history goes back to Roman times, and the current owner, Roman Nowotnichanski, took over the estate in 2000 and really turned it around. It's producing some of the greatest wines at the Saar. So this one is called Rotschiefer because it's grown on iron-rich red slate. And the cabinet style from the Mosel is one of the most classic wine styles in the wine world. There are very few places in the world that can produce something so distinct, so beautiful, and so complex. But let's taste this one. So the nose is less intense than the previous Riesling. It's more refined. You got some flavors of white peaches, some green apple flavors as well, but it's all very delicate. You don't have any of those petrol notes that the previous wine had. So it's much more fresh, much more on the fruit. This is super refreshing. It apparently has 25 grams of residual sugar, but you don't feel it at all. It just disappears in the mouth, and it's just fruity and nice and beautiful. So a really good wine. It also received a score on Vivino of 4.0, which is quite common in this tasting apparently. And it cost 13 euros in Germany, so that would be roughly $15. It is a bit less concentrated, less complex in comparison to the previous Riesling, so I would rate this 88 points, which is still really good, but I just don't think that it has the same concentration and vibrancy as the previous Riesling. So let's put this back on and save this for the aperitif tonight. So the next wine is a rosé, the M Minuti from the Provence. The Provence is really the benchmark for producing great rosé, and they've been doing this for a long time before rosé was a big hype. So now everyone's trying to emulate what they are doing down there. This one actually has the lowest score on Vivino with 3.9, but I mean 3.9, 4.0, what's the difference really? This costs 15 euros 16, and in the US it would be a little bit more than $20 US, but I guess if you look at the right place you find it at exactly $20 US. So if you look at the color, this is really the typical rosé color in the Provence. So this wine smells of strawberries, raspberries. It's quite delicate and fine, but there's a little bit of gummy bear flavor as well, so a little bit of artificial fruit flavor, which is not necessarily something that I really like. On the palate it's good, it has some juiciness, a little bit of grip there as well, but it's not really exciting. I think this is a pretty good rosé, but it's not great. I mean, it's not something to rave about, so I would score this 85 points, which is quite a bit lower than all of the other wines. But yeah, I think this is a good wine, but it's not something outstanding, not good enough for more than 85. So this is another classic. Marques de Riscal has actually been around since 1858, so for a long time. And this is a wine, I don't really know how much they produce of this, but it's available pretty much everywhere, and usually it's pretty good. So this is from the Rioja region. I don't actually know why they always put this net around the bottle. It's decorative, I guess. Okay, I can already smell this wine. It's very concentrated and rich. I don't even have to hold the glass to my nose. It's funny, it's been a while since I last tasted a Rioja wine, so it's quite nice to see an old friend again. So you have this combination of ripe cherries, coconut, and a little bit of chocolate as well. The coconut and chocolate flavor comes from the American oak that is usually used for storing Rioja wines. This was stored in 100% American oak, and they really give the wine quite a lot of flavor, which is pretty typical for Rioja. The other side, the cherry notes come from Tempranillo. This is 96% Tempranillo, so the majority by far is Tempranillo. And Tempranillo has these beautiful cherry flavor notes that go really well with the oak flavors. So on the palate, this is silky and rich. The tannins are really velvety. The length is very long. This retails at below $20 US. So I think this is a real bargain. I mean, consider also that this is an aged wine, 2016 vintage. This was scored 4.0 on Vivino, which is just 0.1 points more than the rosé, which doesn't make any sense at all to me. I think actually that this is probably more in the 90 to 91 point range. I think this is a really great effort. I'd score it 91 points. So now we're leaving Europe and flying across the Atlantic to Argentina. This is from Mendoza, and the winery is called Viña Cobos, which is a project by a very talented winemaker, Paul Hobbs. So I'm quite looking forward to tasting this wine. So Mendoza is really the center of the Argentine wine scene. I was there a few years ago, and it's quite a stunning place. So I'm actually not 100% sure because I don't know the wine, but it feels a little bit tired, it feels a little bit oxidized. So I'm guessing there might have been something wrong with the cork. I'm not going to rate this, but if I had to, I wouldn't give it a high score. Nope. So this is actually a wine that I've never heard of. It's the 2017 Bodegas Borsal Tzares Syrah from Campo de Borja in Spain, which is located in northeast of Spain. It's quite a hot zone, very hot, very dry, produces quite concentrated and rich wines. And this is actually the highest scored wine in the tasting on Vivino, at least, with 4.1 points. So let's see. What is quite interesting here is that it's actually called Shiraz, not Syrah. Usually wines from Europe that are made with the grape variety Syrah are called Syrah, and the wines from Australia or other places in the New World are called Shiraz. But it's also a statement when it comes to the style. Shirazes tend to be more concentrated, rich, and maybe a little bit more oaky than Syrahs. So let's see what kind of style this is. So this is definitely very concentrated and very rich. You have bright fruit flavors like cassis, a little bit of blueberries as well, but you also have a lot of oak, a lot of coffee flavors, there's vanilla there, a lot of concentration and richness. This isn't bad in general. I think there's actually quite a lot of balance and complexity there, so I wouldn't say this is bad. It's just very powerful, very rich. On the palate you also got lots of concentration, power, vanilla, so it's actually a bit overdone in my opinion. The score of 4.1 actually makes a lot of sense. Lots of people like this concentrated and rich style. For me, it's a little bit overdone. It's not my cup of tea. I would still give this wine 90 points, but it's not greater than all of the other wines. Just more extracted, more concentrated. So the last wine in the tasting is actually a very successful brand, the 19 Crimes, the Banished Dark Red 2019 vintage. It received a 4.0 Vivino score, and it's among the top 1% of all wines in the world, apparently. So let's see whether that's actually the case. So this is a wine based on a marketing idea rather than an origin or a chateau name. The label features people who have committed one of the 19 crimes and were therefore sent from England to Australia. And this is obviously loosely based on the history of Australia. So I have heard a lot about these wines, haven't tasted them yet. I'm looking forward to changing that, I guess. There's actually also an app that you can use to scan the label, and then the person on the label will tell you his or her story.
My name is James Wilson, and I fight to the end.
Okay, let's see whether the wine is actually more convincing than that. So there's very little information on the wine on the label, so it doesn't mention any grape varieties, and the origin is southeastern Australia, which is kind of the biggest designation in Australia itself. And this obviously doesn't really make me think that this is going to be great, but let's taste it. It is certainly very dark, and that's kind of the name of the wine as well, dark red. So it is very dark, that's for sure. I actually thought it would be more powerful, more cooked and concentrated, but it's actually less concentrated than the previous, the Syrah. So this is quite, bland, I'd say. I mean, there's not a lot of complexity there. You got cherry flavors there. You got a little bit of cassis as well. There's some coconut coming from US oak, I assume. On the palate, it's juicy. The acidity is quite harsh, and there's not much tannins going on there. So it's not terrible, but it's quite boring, really. And it doesn't show a lot of complexity. It got a Vivino score of 4.0, which I completely don't understand. If all of the other wines also got 4.0, then I don't think this sits in the same category. I think this is probably more like an 82, 83 point wine. It's well made, there are no big issues there, but it's certainly not on the same level of quality than any of the other wines in the tasting. So, what the hell? Okay, we didn't finish on a high note, but that's fine. I gotta say that the selection was pretty good. There were some wines that were worse and some wines that were better, but overall it was pretty good. I don't quite understand the scores though, because all of those wines were 4.0, 3.9, 4.1, so very close together, even though I didn't think that they are quality-wise very close together. So I'm not really sure whether the Vivino score helps me as much as a 100-point score, for example, especially because I actually quite like the individuality of a 100-point score from one critic. So if I know that person likes a certain style, I can put the numbers, the score, into context with the rating, whereas on Vivino I never really know who scored the wines, what do they like and what don't they like. But I would of course be interested in hearing what you guys think of Vivino. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Please comment down below and let me know what your experience is with Vivino's scores. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, then please like it down here, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and I hope I see you guys again soon. Until then, another one. Thirsty.